My name is Daniel. I'm 48 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought family meant safety. I grew up in rural Florida working in my father's construction supply stores. While my friends partied and went to college, I was hauling cement bags at dawn. Dad always said, "Money comes and goes, son, but family stays. It's the only investment that never fails." I believed him completely. God, I believed him. My younger brother Lucas was different. 3 years younger, but worlds apart. He was the dreamer, always talking about startups and living in New York. Dad would smile proudly. "You're my right-hand man, Daniel. Lucas is going to conquer the world." I never complained. Being the one who stayed felt honorable. I thought loyalty meant something. Over the years, we grew from 1 store to 4. Dad went from scribbled notebooks to trucks, employees, and real contracts. And through it all, I was the guy holding everything together. Lucas, always coming and going. Miami for a few months. California, Vegas. He'd show up with stories about investors, but never with actual money. Sometimes I'd catch Dad staring out the window, worried. "You concerned about Lucas?" I'd ask. He'd smile sadly. "You're grounded, son. Lucas is still finding his footing." It stung. I was solving every problem, dealing with angry customers, covering for late suppliers. But Lucas was the one with potential. Life rolled on. Dad's hair turned white. I ran everything: contracts, payroll, negotiations. But he still signed the important documents. He was the owner. I was the devoted son. The natural heir, everyone said. At least, that's what I believed. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the office going through invoices when Dad walked in with Lucas right behind him. Lucas hadn't been around for almost a year. No calls, no texts, nothing. And the way he walked in, with that overly wide smile and exaggerated hug for Dad, something inside me froze. "Danny, my man," he said, arms open like we were childhood best friends. I forced a smile and hugged him back. "Long time no see. Where have you been this time? Dubai? Mars?" He laughed too loudly. "California, actually. Big tech stuff. Startups. You wouldn't get it," my father interrupted, visibly excited. "Let's sit, boys. Family business." When he said family business, I felt that old pride warm my chest. Finally, I thought, he's making it official. We entered the small meeting room. Dad sat at the head, me on one side, Lucas on the other. Dad cleared his throat and began, "Daniel, I'm not going to live forever. We need to get things in order. The company's grown. The stores are doing well." I nodded, feeling relief mixed with anxiety. "Of course, Dad. We can find a lawyer. Put my name on contracts, on properties." He raised his hand. "I already found a lawyer." I stopped. "What do you mean, already?" That's when I noticed the thick blue folder in front of him, full of papers. Lucas was looking at me with a strange smile, not brotherly, triumphant. "I prepared a succession agreement," my father continued. "Something fair, for both sons." "Fair how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Lucas leaned back like he was watching a show. "Daniel, you've always been here, I know. You've done a lot. But your brother has big projects, modern things." Dad let out a nervous chuckle. "I can't leave him with nothing." My stomach churned. "Dad, nobody's talking about leaving Lucas with nothing." "I just thought after all these years..." He cut me off. "The plan is this. The stores, the properties, everything goes in a trust, and the main administrator will be Lucas." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What?" "You remain general manager, of course. With salary, bonuses, but legally, the control will be his." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process it. "Dad, this is a joke, right?" "Lucas has never even managed a lemonade stand." Lucas gave an arrogant smile. "Relax, Danny. You're good at running day to day. I'm good at strategy, scaling, bringing in investors." My father continued as if I hadn't spoken. "I already signed the papers. You two just need to sign a few minor things. It's what's best for the family." The word family started sounding like a threat. You already signed. The betrayal wasn't just the content. It was how he'd done everything behind my back. In silence. Without a conversation. Without even listening. "I've been here 30 years, Dad," I said, my voice breaking. "I lost marriages, friends, opportunities to take care of this place. And you hand control to someone who doesn't even know the employees and names." Lucas leaned forward. "Someone has to think big, Daniel. You think small. That's your problem." I stared at my father, hoping he'd defend me. But he said nothing. Didn't look me in the eyes. Right there. I felt for the first time that I wasn't part of the family. I was just cheap labor who thought he had blood in his veins. For days after, I moved through my own life like a stranger. I still opened the store at 7, still walked the aisles, checked inventory, smiled at customers who'd watched me grow up. From the outside, nothing changed. Inside, everything had. Dad stopped coming by alone. Now he showed up with Lucas and Amanda, Lucas's new fiancée, walking in like they already owned the place. Whenever I passed the office, I'd hear fragments, equity structure, valuation, exit strategy. Big, shiny words that were supposed to sound like opportunity. But in their mouths, all I heard was, "You're in the way." The employees noticed before I said anything. "So is Mr. Lucas the new boss now?" an older cashier asked, half joking. "He's not the boss," I said automatically. "As long as you're still here," she replied. "This place feels normal." I smiled, but it felt like someone twisted a knife in my chest. A week later, Lucas called a team meeting. He stood in front of everyone like a motivational speaker, Amanda by his side, Dad in back with tired eyes. "Big changes are coming," Lucas announced. "We're modernizing. We're taking this from a mom-and-pop operation to a real company. New systems, new branding, new leadership structure." I was standing off to the side, arms crossed. "And what exactly does that mean for everyone here?" Lucas gave me a quick glance like my question was an inconvenience. "It means growth, professional management. We're bringing in a COO from outside, someone with multi-state experience." A murmur ran through the group. "And where do I fit?" I pressed. Amanda answered smoothly. "Daniel will stay in a more specialized role, closer to stores, less strategic, more operational, actually, less pressure for him." The way she said less strategic made it sound like less important, like I was old equipment they hadn't figured out how to throw away yet. After the meeting, I heard things I was never supposed to hear. In the hallway behind the office, door almost closed, I caught Lucas's voice. "He's too attached. That's why we can't give him real control. If we don't push him aside now, he'll drag this thing down." Amanda replied, "Ice cold. Relax. Once restructuring's done and contracts are signed, he can accept the new role or leave. Legally, he can't touch anything. Your father put everything in the trust under your administration. He has nothing. He has nothing." Those 3 words hit harder than any punch. I stepped back before they could see me, heart hammering. For the first time in my life, standing in a place I'd given everything to, I realized, in their eyes, I was nothing. Replaceable. Disposable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, mind racing through every sacrifice. The missed holidays. The relationships that fell apart because I was always at the store. The vacations I never took. All of it. And now I was a problem to be managed. A loose end. At some point around 3 a.m., a memory surfaced. A conversation with my father from years ago, closing the store late. He'd had a couple beers and was in a rare talkative mood. "If something ever happens to me, Daniel," he'd said quietly, "there's a safe deposit box at First County Bank. Everything that really matters is in there. Things that can't get lost in the shuffle." "Like what?" I'd asked. You'll know if you ever need it. I hope you never do. I'd forgotten that moment, buried it under years of routine. But now, lying in the dark, those words came back like a flare. Everything that really matters, lost in the shuffle. What if not everything was in Lucas's trust? What if there was something else? Something Dad put aside before Amanda, before lawyers, before investors. My pulse raced, not with fear, but with something dangerously close to hope. The next morning, I left early. Didn't go to the store, drove straight to First County Bank. I had no idea what I'd find, but whatever was in that box had the power to tear apart every lie they'd built around me, and finally show who'd really been betrayed in this family. The lobby was quiet when I walked in. Soft music, polished floors, that faint smell of paper and cleaner. I'd been there 100 times. That morning felt different, like walking into a courtroom where I didn't know the verdict. At the counter, a woman greeted me professionally. "Good morning. How can I help?" "I need access to a safe deposit box," I said. "Under my father's name, Carlos Mendez. I'm his son." She typed, then paused. "Do you have authorization on file for access?" My stomach tightened. "I'm not sure. My father told me years ago if anything happened, I should come here." She looked sympathetic but procedural. "I'll need to check with the manager." "Please have a seat." I sat, mind spinning. If I couldn't access it, game over, one more dead end. After a few minutes, a man in a suit walked out. "Mr. Mendez, I'm Mark, branch manager. I see your name is listed as secondary authorized user, added about 11 years ago." I blinked. He added me. "Yes, as long as you provide ID, you can access the box." For a second, I couldn't speak. My father had thought ahead, long before trusts, lawyers, Amanda. He'd thought of me. Mark led me through a heavy door into a narrow room lined with metal drawers. "Your father's key and the bank's key," he said. "We both turn them. Once it's open, I'll give you privacy." We turned the keys. Metal slid open with a dull, final sound. Inside was a long metal box. Mark placed it on a table and left, closing the door. For a moment, I just stood there. My hand shook when I finally lifted the lid. Inside were neatly stacked envelopes, documents in plastic sleeves, and a small black leather notebook. I picked up the top envelope. In Dad's unmistakable handwriting, "To be opened by Daniel only if he is being unfairly treated." My chest tightened. I opened it carefully. Inside, a letter dated 8 years earlier. "Daniel, if you're reading this, what I feared has happened. I love both my sons, but I'm not blind. I know who's been here, and who only appears when there's something to gain. I allowed lawyers to talk me into structures I don't fully understand. They see in Lucas the future they want, but this business was built with your hands, not theirs. Before any of that, I made separate arrangements. In the folder below you'll find a will signed and notarized before any trust existed. Property titles to 2 store buildings in your name only. Documents showing portions of assets never moved into the trust. If they're pushing you aside, remember, the trust isn't the whole story. I didn't have courage to tell you in person. Maybe I was afraid, maybe ashamed, but I wanted a record that I knew the truth. Without you, none of this exists. If they betray you, fight. Don't ever let them convince you you're nothing. You're the one who held this together. Your father, Carlos." I had to sit down. The room blurred as the weight hit me. I went through the rest with numb hands. The will, clear as day. Substantial share of the company, specific properties designated to me. Dated years before Lucas's trust, legally binding. The property titles. 2 of the most valuable locations, transferring entirely to my name. And then one more thing. In the black notebook, page after page of Dad's handwritten notes, dates, meetings, conversations with lawyers and investors, concerns about Lucas's spending, doubts about Amanda. Proof, not just of what he owned, but of what he knew. When I walked out of that bank, I wasn't the same man who'd walked in. They thought I was cornered, that I had nothing. But now I had something they didn't know existed: leverage, legal rights, and the truth in my father's handwriting. For the first time in months, I felt like I could fight back, and I knew exactly when I'd use it. At the one place they thought they'd finally humiliate me in front of everyone. Lucas and Amanda's wedding. The day of the wedding felt wrong from the moment I woke up. Sky too bright, air too hot. I stood in front of the mirror straightening a tie I didn't want to wear, for a ceremony I didn't want to attend, celebrating a future built over my back like a bridge. But I went because of the documents in my inside pocket. The will, property titles, pages from Dad's notebook. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to end the performance. The venue was one of those expensive country clubs. Manicured lawns, white chairs in perfect rows, lanterns hanging from trees. People I'd known for years were there. Many came up clapping my shoulder. "Your brother's doing great things with the business, huh? You must be proud." I swallowed the bitterness. Yeah, something like that. The ceremony was a blur. Vows, laughter, Amanda crying just enough without ruining her makeup. Dad walked her down the aisle. That part stung more than expected. They looked like a united front. I looked like a guest. After came the reception. Music, drinks, round tables, a long head table where Lucas and Amanda sat like royalty, parents beside them. I was off to the side with cousins and distant relatives. Good enough to invite, not important enough to display. At some point, the band lowered volume and the DJ tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, the groom would like to say a few words." Lucas stood, glass in hand, grinning. "Thank you all for being here on the best day of my life. Today isn't just about me and Amanda. It's about family, building something bigger together." I almost laughed. He talked about legacy, about honoring what my father built and taking it to the next level. People clapped. Amanda smiled, eyes scanning like a queen approving her kingdom. Then he said it. "And we're also celebrating a new era for the family business. Over the next few months, we'll be restructuring, bringing in new management, professionalizing everything. Time to retire the old ways and step into the future." Several heads turned toward me. Lucas raised his glass slightly in my direction. "And that includes giving my brother Daniel a chance to finally rest. He's been stuck in small day-to-day stuff too long. Time to let bigger minds and bigger strategies lead." A few people laughed politely. They thought it was a joke, but his eyes told another story. Amanda took the mic. "We're so grateful to Carlos for trusting Lucas with this responsibility, and we're excited to guide the company into a more modern, efficient structure." The words hung there. Modern, efficient. Less you, more us. I could have stayed quiet. Swallowed it again. Let them finish the show. But then Amanda added with a sweet, venomous smile, "And of course, Daniel will always be part of our story, in his own way, even if the papers no longer say so." The room went silent for half a beat. Even if the papers no longer say so. That was the line. That was the moment. I stood up. The scrape of my chair cut through murmurs. Every head turned. Lucas frowned. Amanda's eyes narrowed. I walked toward the head table, slow and controlled, heart pounding, hands steady. "Do you want to clarify that, Amanda?" I said loud enough for the microphone to pick up. "About the papers, not saying so." The DJ froze. The band stopped. The room hushed. "Daniel," my mother whispered. "Not here." "No," I said gently without looking at her. "Exactly here." Lucas tried to take back the mic. "Danny, sit down. You're making this weird." I held up a hand. "You've been making this weird for months." I turned to the crowd, to all the witnesses they'd carefully curated. For those who don't know, while I was running the stores for 30 years, my father signed papers behind my back. put everything in a trust, and handed control to Lucas. They even had the generosity to offer me a lesser position in the company I practically built with my own hands. Uneasy shifting, whispers, eyes darting between us. "That's not accurate," Amanda said quickly. "You're misinterpreting." I pulled a folded document from my pocket and placed it on the table. "Am I?" I turned to my father. "Because this is your will, dated 8 years ago, long before any trust, any restructuring, any bride." A low sound rippled through the room. Dad's face went pale. "Daniel, we shouldn't—" "Oh, we should," I cut in. "We absolutely should. While everyone's been told I'm just the guy on the ground with no real rights, this will say something different. It says a significant portion of the business is mine, by name, along with 2 of the most valuable properties set to transfer directly to me. Properties, by the way, never legally moved into Lucas's precious trust." I pulled out another document. Title deeds, filed, notarized, still valid. "Unless you'd like to explain right now, in front of everyone, why you tried to pretend they don't exist." Amanda's face hardened. Lucas's smile was gone. "That's private family business," Amanda said tightly. "This isn't the time or place." "You made it the time and place," I replied. "When you stood up here and publicly demoted me at your wedding. When you tried to rewrite the story in front of people who've known me and my father for decades." I reached into my pocket one last time and pulled out photocopied pages, Dad's notebook entries. Dates, meetings, notes about how lawyers pushed you into the trust arrangement, notes about how worried he was that Lucas was spending too much, listening too much to outside voices, notes about you, Amanda, your suggestions, your pressure. I let that sink in. My father's eyes filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Shame. "I'm not here to ruin your wedding," I said finally, voice quieter but clear. "You already did that when you decided the only way to rise was to humiliate the person who held you up." I turned so my voice carried through the silent room. "So here's what's happening. Either you sit down with me, with a real lawyer, and we respect every legal document my father signed, all of them, not just the ones that benefit you, or I walk out and take this entire mess to court, publicly." A few guests gasped. Investors didn't like public family lawsuits. Business partners didn't like messy reputations. Amanda knew that. Lucas knew that. I could see it in their eyes. The calculation, the panic. For the first time since this started, they weren't looking at me like I was nothing. They were looking at me like someone who could destroy everything. I took a step back from the head table. "This is your big day," I said to Lucas quietly. "Decide what you want it remembered for." And then I did the one thing they never expected. I put the mic down, and I walked away. I walked out to a soundtrack of whispers. Behind me, the band hadn't restarted. No clinking glasses. Just low, confused murmurs as people tried to make sense of what happened. Outside, the air was cooler, quieter. I loosened my tie, took a long breath, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was drowning. My phone buzzed. A text from a senior employee. "If you ever open your own place, I'm with you, no matter what." I stared at that message and realized something. No matter how this turned out legally, the balance of power had shifted. They weren't the only ones who could decide my worth anymore. About 20 minutes later, my father came outside. He didn't look like the proud father of the groom. He looked older than I'd ever seen him. "Daniel," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I turned to face him. "Now you want to talk. Not in the office. Not before you signed things. Not when they were planning my exit. Now, at your son's wedding." He winced. "I'm sorry. You're right. I handled this badly." "No," I replied. "You handled this like I was an employee, not a son." He closed his eyes, then looked at me again. When your mother got sick years ago, I got scared about the future, about the business. When Lucas showed up talking about investors and structures, I listened. He spoke with confidence. The lawyers agreed. I felt old, out of my depth. And I wasn't even in the room, I said. He nodded, ashamed. And they said the trust was safest, that putting Lucas as administrator would attract capital, that your work was already recognized in your salary, like money ever measured what you gave. So why the will? I asked. Why the titles? Why the notebook? Because I knew, he said simply. I knew who built this with me. I knew who stayed. And I knew there was a chance they might forget, or pretend to. I didn't have courage to confront it directly. So I did the coward's thing. I prepared for the day you'd have to confront it for me. He paused. I didn't think it would happen like this. At a wedding, in front of everyone. That part they chose, I said. Not me. He let out a long breath. You were right in there. They've been treating you like a problem, like someone to be managed out. That's not how you treat family. That's not how you treat the man who held everything together while the other one chased dreams. Silence settled between us, heavy, honest. So what now? I asked. He looked me in the eye. Really looked this time. Now we fix it, properly. Everything on the table, all documents, all signatures. No more secrets, no more closed doors. If Lucas wants to stay in the business, it'll be as your partner, not your replacement. If he doesn't accept that, he can build his own empire from scratch like you did. I studied his face, the lines, the tiredness, the regret. And Amanda? I asked. He shook his head slightly. Amanda's not my problem to solve. She's his choice. But she doesn't get to decide who my sons are to me, or what you deserve. He reached into his jacket and took out a small, familiar key, the twin of the one I'd used at the bank. I should have given you this years ago, he said, placing it in my hand. Not as backup, as what you are, my successor, not because you stayed, but because you earned it. I closed my fingers around the key. It was small, simple, but it felt heavier than any contract. Over the next weeks, everything got messier before it got better. There were meetings, long, tense, uncomfortable meetings. Lawyers at the table, raised voices, tears from my mother, silence from Lucas, then anger, then bargaining. Amanda tried to push, to intimidate, to suggest I was destroying the family by insisting on my rights. But the will, the titles, the notebook didn't care about her opinion, or anyone's narrative. Bit by bit, the truth forced its way to the surface. In the end, an agreement was reached. I became co-owner, officially, on paper, not just in effort, but in shares, titles, and decision-making power. The trust was restructured. Lucas kept a significant stake, more than he'd ever have earned alone, but not control over me. And for the first time, my position wasn't something they could quietly erase. We still work together today, but the illusion is gone. We're not the picture-perfect family people imagined. There are scars now, conversations that can't be unsaid, looks that carry too much history. But there are also clear lines, clear roles, clear respect, even if some of it's reluctant. As for my father, he got quieter. We talk more honestly now, less about sales, more about regrets. He doesn't use big speeches about family anymore. He just shows up. Some days, that's enough. People think the worst part of betrayal is the moment you find out. It's not. The worst part is the slow, creeping feeling that maybe you were stupid for trusting in the first place, that maybe you imagined your own importance. Standing in that bank reading my father's letter, I realized something. I wasn't stupid. I wasn't imagining anything. They tried to rewrite the story without me. But they forgot one simple fact. The person who knows the story from the beginning is the one who can tell it to the world. And once you speak the truth out loud, in front of everyone, there's no going back to the version where you're invisible. So if you've ever given everything to people who treated you like you were nothing, remember this. Sometimes the only way to stop being the victim in someone else's story is to finally start being the narrator of your own. And when you do, they can't take that away from you.